everyone, welcome to Ian and Friends. I'm FloBikes Senior Editor Ian Dille.
And I am Michael Sheehan. Today we are previewing the first of the cobbled classics of the 2019 season, Omloop Het Nieuwsblad. It is going to be live and on demand on FloBikes this Saturday, March 2nd.
Now this is the 74th running of Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, and it is kind of considered the mini Tour of Flanders. Last year its course was reconfigured to finish, or I guess the penultimate climb is the famous Muur van Geraardsbergen, a climb that was removed from the finish of the Tour of Flanders in 2012 to much protest and consternation by hardcore cycling fans. So if you love the previous Tour of Flanders course, Omloop Het Nieuwsblad is the race for you. It has the exact same run-in to the finish in Meerbeek.
Yeah, and this year's Omloop has gotten just a little bit harder, but we are keeping the Kapelmuur, as the Muur van Geraardsbergen is also known, as the penultimate climb. And really, I have to say, it is one of the most iconic images in cycling, and I think that you are going to see a little bit of the magic that this Berg has in store for the race, even as you watch it on your television screen. It is just an incredible view, these riders charging up towards the chapel at the top.
Yeah, and so this year we're going to be looking at 14 cobblestone sectors at Omloop in comparison to 11 last year, a slight course configuration to throw in a little bit more cobblestones, and then I think we're looking at 14 bergs in comparison to the Tour of Flanders has 18 bergs. The Flanders is also over 260 kilometers long, where Omloop is in that 200 kilometer long or 125 mile range. The big storyline coming into this race is Deceuninck Quickstep. As we well know, they lost Nicky Terpstra, who won the Tour of Flanders last year. Has Quickstep lost their magic?
Absolutely not. There has been a lot of speculation about Quickstep because they lost their go-to classic star, Nicky Terpstra. They also lost their sprint talent, Fernando Gaviria, over their title sponsor woes at the end of 2018. But let's just take a look at the roster that Quickstep is taking into this opening classic of the season. It is led by Yves Lampaert. They have Tim de Klerk, Philippe Gilbert, Ilio Kaiser, Bob Jungels, Florian Senecal, and Zdeněk Štýbar. This is, as always, as we have come to expect from Quickstep for the last forever, it is an all-star classics team, and anyone who thinks that they have stepped down a rung in the classics is, I think, going to be very, very wrong.
Yes, Zdeněk Štýbar has already proved he's on incredible form, winning an uphill finish at a stage of the Vuelta al Algarve. Also, Florian Senecal is a rider who I think is a little bit under the radar. He was on the podium at Scheldeprijs, kind of the Sprinters Classic. I mean, this is a team where the fourth or fifth rider on this roster can still win the race. Sure, Nicky Terpstra is gone, a big loss, but he's being replaced by Bob Jungels, who may not have the same experience on the cobblestones as Terpstra, but ostensibly is an even stronger rider. So this team may have even gotten stronger with the loss of Terpstra. Now last year, heads turned when Astana won Omloop with Michael Valgren, but as we saw, Valgren went on to become one of the best one-day riders in the entire world. He was fourth at the Tour of Flanders, and then seventh at Worlds, also won Amstel Gold. And I think this really gets at a storyline where we spend a lot of time talking about Quickstep, but these other teams that are not traditionally big classics teams are upping their game. They're recruiting top talent, and we're going to go through some of the riders we think could be the next big classic stars to break out at Omloop.
Yeah, there have been a lot of young riders pegged as future classic stars, and they are really spread throughout a variety of teams. First and foremost, let's talk about Wout van Aert. March 1st, his contract begins with Jumbo-Visma. The very next day, he will be starting Omloop Het Nieuwsblad in his new colors. This is, of course, three-time world cyclocross champion. He is coming out of an absolute pressure cooker of a cyclocross season where he had a phenomenal run of it, but unfortunately just nobody could look good next to Mathieu van der Poel this cyclocross season. This is going to be a really big test for him. He has less pressure on him on the road right now, but still no shortage of expectations. He showed his class at Strade Bianche last year. He is going for a full Classics campaign this year. It's going to be really a question of, was he all in for cyclocross this season, or are we going to see him absolutely flying in the Classics? I personally think that starting this weekend, this is what he's been preparing for the last few months.
Yeah, a lot of expectations on Wout. I mean, not only third at Strade Bianche, but also top 10 at the Tour of Flanders and Ghent-Wevelgem. Another Belgian rider that we also have our eye on is Jasper Philipsen, and this is a rider that was topped by Tom Boonen as, the next Belgian star to emerge. We spent a lot of time talking about, prodigy Remco Evenepoel on Quick-Step, but Philipsen is only 20 years old. He's already won a World Tour race this year at the Tour Down Under, where he was banging bars with Caleb Ewan. And just a guy who has a ton of confidence, definitely not afraid to get up there in the mix. Certainly some to watch, and also, speaks to these smaller teams really raising their games, or maybe not smaller, but not traditional Classics teams raising their games. He's on UAE Team Emirates. He's 20 years old, but he's definitely going to have the leadership at UAE, so it's going to be exciting to see what he can do.
Yeah, another rider that I want to kind of peg for everyone to keep their eye on is Chris Lawless. He is a 23-year-old rider on Team Sky. If you were paying attention last year, you would have noticed him. He had a pretty brilliant breakout year on the World Tour level, having just graduated from the Action Higgins-Berman squad. He notched up a podium at Cheldepre as well as a win at Kopi Bartoli. This is a rider who is incredibly cagey, incredibly crafty. He is not afraid to fight for position when the going gets tough. He was actually the National British Criterium champion as a 20-year-old. I think that this is going to be a rider that Sky has pegged for big things in the Classics, and they are giving him a shot at the big show this year. So keep an eye on Chris. Really, there's no telling what he's going to be capable of.
Yeah, and then the final rider we're going to peg is Jasper Stuyven. He is a known entity, of course, in the Classics. He's Mr. Consistent. His results last year, 4th at Omloop, 6th at E3, 7th at the Tour of Flanders, and 5th at Paris-Roubaix. So obviously he's always there in the mix, but he hasn't quite notched that big Classics win. He really burst onto the scene a few years ago when he won Kern-Brussels-Kern, which we'll also be broadcasting on Sunday. I think this is the year for Jasper to really, get that big win. He's 26 years old, and he's also got an incredibly strong team behind him this year, or alongside him, I should say. John Degenkolb is back on form, that incredible victory on the cobbles at the Tour de France, and as well as Mads Pedersen, this phenomenal young Danish talent who was 2nd at the Tour of Flanders last year. So Trek will not only have an incredible team, but I think it's also Jasper's big chance to announce himself as a Classic star right alongside their Greg Van Avermaet and the rest of them.
Yeah, and this is no disrespect to what Jasper has done the last few years, but we have just seen him constantly chipping away and getting a little bit better every year. And last year he didn't get a big victory. He was just always thereabouts. This year might be the year.
It's going to be an exciting race. We can't wait to tune in, and we can't wait for the Classic season to get started.
Please join us.